Hey everyone, Ed Sanchez here. I know the other two videos on my channel are of my 83 Buick Regal wagon, which I still have. Voila. This one's going to be a little different. This is going to be about EV charging. Since I made those last videos, I've since bought and, gosh, it's been about 5 years now, and have driven a Tesla Model 3, a 2019 Standard Range Plus. I've learned a lot, put a lot of miles on it, taken several road trips. So this is I'm gonna try to demystify EV charging a little bit and basically demonstrate how you can basically charge your car wherever you can find power. A lot of people have the incorrect notion that you can only charge at home, you could only charge off a wall outlet, or conversely, you can only charge at a level 3 DC fast charger, whether that's a supercharger, Electrify America, EVgo. That's not correct. You have many more options. However, some of those options require you to purchase certain accessories, some of which I will go over here. So I hope you find this video informative, and something I'll mention toward the end of the video, that if you want to learn more about the world of EVs and charging. So as you can see, I have a lot of stuff here, ranging from some pretty big beefy extension cords, which we'll go over, and some other stuff I just generally keep in my car, some of which I've literally never used, but you know, like the saying goes, be prepared. I never want to be caught on the off chance where I need to charge and I can't because I don't have the right plug type. Believe it or not, even with this whole collection, there are still some adapters I don't have that are offered and you can purchase. But anyway, just going to go through this step by step. Hope you learned something from it, and please make any comments you want about any questions you have or other videos you'd like to see. So this big mamma jamma right here, this is a 1450 extension cord. This is, I would say, probably the most common standard for 240 volt EV charging generally. Most of the chargers you get from the OEMs or the ones that plug into a wall use this standard. Now, there's some people that are absolutely fanatical and say never, ever use an extension cord with an EV charger. Well, yes and no. I've done it many times safely. Haven't had any major issues with it. As you can see, this is extremely thick. I don't even frankly know what gauge this is. It's about one inch diameter cord. Let's see if it even says on here. This is 6 gauge, I guess. So that is extremely beefy. I have used it at RV parks. Most modern RV parks will have generally 50 amp, the newer ones like the KOAs, and some of them will have dual 50 amp and 30 amp. However, the 30 amp is 120 volt, which I will get to in a little bit. So anyway, yeah, I'd say if you stretch it out, make sure it's not in any water. It's generally kept dry, it kind of not coiled up like this, kind of laid out flat. You're probably pretty good. Obviously, with any kind of EV charging, you want to do 20% below what it's rated for. So for instance, if it's a 50 amp rated outlet, you only want to pull a maximum of 40 amps. So it would be 50 to 40, 40 to 30, and then, or 40 to 32 rather. And then for 30 amps, you only want to be pulling a max of 24 amps. So that's kind of the general rule. In my car, the Model 3, and I think most Teslas, you can manually adjust the amperage down in the car. So you can pull less than what the cord or the outlet is rated for, just to be on the safe side. So that's always an option. So moving on, the yellow cord here, and I have used this also a few times. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. All right, this one was being a little stubborn with me, and you'll see why. This is what they call a locking cord. So as you can see, the prongs are kind of in a circular formation, and you'll see they have little tabs on them that kind of stick out. So the principle behind that is you put them into an outlet and it kind of has a twist lock, which will lock it in place. So I've actually used this at my friend's house, and he has an L1430 outlet. And I also have an adapter that I can use directly with this. So have used it, it does come in handy. L1430s are, I wouldn't say they're common, I wouldn't say they're uncommon. They're typically found kind of at commercial and industrial buildings, sometimes in areas where they'll have like outdoor exhibits or vendors, you know, place that'll do like, I don't know, like craft fairs, or if sometimes, you know, like a commercial grade bounce house or something, maybe you might use something like this. I don't know. So good to have. So you can get these on Amazon like almost anything anymore. Not super common, not super uncommon. L1430, you do find them out there, like I said, usually commercial buildings, those sort of installations, you'll find those. Going back to the 50 amp 1450, I'd say that's probably the predominant standard for level 2 chargers, those that plug in rather than are hardwired. And most newer RV parks have a 1450, not all, but most. So I'm going to get into some of the more unusual adapters here. These are not, you can buy them. I bought them off a specialty website that I will link in the video notes. So now we're going to get into kind of the more obscure adapters. We'll get to this one in a second here. I'd like to talk about this one. So this one is interesting because the two ends are different. So you'll see on this end, it's a 1450 receptacle, but on this end, it's what's called a TT30. So just I was talking about RV parks where the newer ones will have a 1450. They'll usually have two outlets in the charging post for an RV space. So typically they'll have a 1450 on the newer, nicer RV parks. And this is kind of the older standard, which a lot of places still have. Sometimes this is all they have, is what's called a TT30. So what's interesting about this is it's 30 amp. So that's fairly common for a lot of 240 volt standards, like the L1430 I showed you in the extension cord there. But it's only 120 volt, so that's the same voltage as you get with a standard household outlet. But it does have double the amperage, so this will charge, at least on my car, it'll give me probably 10 to 12 miles per hour of charging on my Model 3 SR Plus. So this is a handy one to have. I use this obviously with the 1450 extension cord to use in an RV park. So this one's a nice one to have. Again, it doesn't give you a super fast charging rate, but it's a good one to have in your collection. If you do go to RV parks a lot, or you know, you camp out with friends that do that. So here's another one that's also usable with the 1450 cord. So it's 1450 on this end. This end is a 1030. So this is kind of somewhat of a deprecated plug standard, but you'll still find them in a lot of houses. This is 30 amp. A lot of electrical dryers for many years use this standard. So you'll still see this in a lot of houses. I think they kind of stopped using this, I'd say probably mid 1980s, maybe before that. The newer standard for this in new construction is called 1430, which I will show you in a second. So most of the newer houses that have a 240 volt plug in the garage for a dryer will have 1430, but you'll still find this often enough. This might be a handy one to have if you're staying with friends or family, or like at a Airbnb, if the hosts allow that. That's somewhat of a controversial topic with some. That's kind of a separate conversation, but if the hosts allow you to do EV charging, this could be a good one to have just in case. All right, so now we're going to get more into the Tesla world specifically, because I drive Model 3, so that's what I'm going to talk about. So this is my kind of modular adapter collection. You'll notice they all have the same adapter end because they're designed to work with the Tesla mobile charger. So all these different adapters will plug into that. And that little box is smart enough to recognize these and will usually automatically adjust the amperage. Now, the exception to that is when you're using these third-party adapters that kind of switch standards from like 1450 to 1030 or TT30, if the mobile charger is plugged into the extension cord, it will pull as much as the extension cord is rated for, not what the plug is. So when you're using, and again, Tesla doesn't officially condone or approve of this, so just keep that in mind if you're one to strictly follow the owner's manual. But if you're using a 1450 extension cord with a 30 amp adapter, it will pull the full 30 amps through the cord. So when you're doing that, you want to manually go in and reduce your amperage draw to 24 in the car. Now, if you're pulling full 30 amps for a short period of time, probably not the end of the world, but just as a general rule, if you're using an extension cord with an adapter that kind of changes, that has different standards on the plug-in receptacle, you will have to manually adjust your amperage downward in the car to be on the safe side. All right, moving on here. All right, so this is a 515. This is your standard North American grounded wall outlet. This will work. It is very slow. This probably on a fully depleted battery on my car, I think would take about 40 hours. So basically two full days. And mine only has, I don't even know if it's a 60 kilowatt hour battery. By EV standards, it's a very small battery. So you can imagine like a Hummer EV or an F-150 Lightning. This would take literally several days, 3 or 4 days or more to fully charge it. So yes, it's an option. Is it the best option? No. But it's there if you need it. If you're on vacation, you're not going to be driving much. You're just going to be kind of laying around the house. Again, you're not going anywhere. It's fine. Here's the 1450. Again, this would go natively with that extension cord. This is also most of the EV chargers that come with the vehicles, for those that still do. Case in point would be the Mustang Mach-E, the Hyundai Ioniq 5. I think most of them come with both the ones that have a modular end connection with them come with the 515, like I showed you a little earlier, or this. And actually, Tesla used to include this, both the 515 and the 1450, with the mobile charger, with the vehicles when you bought them new. Now they include neither. But frankly, these are only, I think, about 35 bucks each from Tesla. The mobile charger, I think now is like about 250 bucks. So not the end of the world if you have to buy it out of pocket. But they kind of got rid of the perk where they threw it in with the car. So here is the 1030. Again, this is Tesla. You could see by the little T logo there. This is an official Tesla adapter. This is 1030. This is the deprecated dryer plug, like I was telling you about. So you would use this. This is the same end as the gray adapter here. So this one I bought to use in case I need an extension cord to, reach it out from the far side of the garage to outside the garage or whatever if I needed to charge. Anyway, but again, so 1030 has been superseded by the 1430. So this is a little bit different designed. It's 4 prongs. One of these is, I guess, kind of a dummy or neutral. And one of them is a ground. But this is the more common standard you'll find in newer homes. This is what I have myself. I'll show you over here. So this is basically my home charger. Sorry for the bad lighting, but that is a 1430 plug. The reason I didn't do a 50 amp is because honestly I couldn't. I have kind of a unique situation. My garage is across the street from my main residence, and so there's a conduit that goes under the street from my house under the street into my garage, and I kind of didn't want to jackhammer up the street and you have to go through that whole rigmarole, because even though it's community property, I'd have to be out of pocket. I'd have to get HOA approval for all of that. So when I consulted with the electrician, I said, I'm perfectly fine with doing 30 amp. I had it at my last house, it worked fine. I said, could we run a 30 amp through the existing conduit under the street without having to redo all of that? So he said, well, let me do some calculations and I'll get back to you. He said, yeah, I think we could run 30 amp, no problem. I said, that's perfect. So that's what I ended up going with. So that's why I have a 30 amp plug in the garage. For a smaller EV with a smaller battery, I'd say maybe up to about 80 kilowatt hours capacity battery. 30 amps should be more than enough. You could probably get a full charge, 10 to 12, maybe 14 hours on up to like an 80 amp. So that's enough when you get home from work, like say 6 p.m. You leave 7:30, 8 o'clock. Besides which, in a typical day, you probably won't go through your entire charge unless you have an exceptionally long commute. So I would say 30 amp would probably work for most people. Again, for home charging, I think 50 amp is probably ideal. For a larger EV like a Rivian or an F-150 Lightning or a Hummer, you'd probably want to look at 80 amp. And at that point, you're probably looking at panel upgrade in some cases. So that's kind of a different kettle of fish. But if up to, I'd say about 80 kilowatt hour battery, you could probably use 30 amp. 50 amp is probably ideal. But anyway, I may do a follow-up video on that to kind of talk through that a little more in depth. But anyway, that's kind of the 30,000 foot flyby. Okay, so here's the Tesla mobile charger. This is, like I said, it used to come with the vehicle. Now you got to pay extra for them. But these are extremely, extremely handy to have. As you can see, I have two. This one is usually in my car, and I have the one that I just kind of use as my permanent home charger. But this one I like having in the car just in case, I'm in an unfamiliar place. There's not really good public charging infrastructure of like a ChargePoint or EVgo or whatever. But, I could find some 240 volt outlets, even 120 volt, whatever. just to have for peace of mind. So the two main ones for this, and this actually, so actually I'll get to this in a second because I want to kind of stay sequential about this. Okay, so this is the main one that you'll want for level 2, like charge point, blink, those, it's 240 volt. So this is the Tesla side, now called NACS. But Tesla and NACS is technically slightly different, which I'll get into in a second. But this is kind of a must-have, I'd say, for Tesla owners. So the pretty much all of the public level 2 charging plugs right now are standard, which is called J1772. So pretty much any EV except Tesla's uses J1772 and CCS1 for DC fast charging natively. Tesla is the only one currently that does not. So Tesla uses this for both level 2 AC and level 3 DC. They use the same plug, same connector. It's much, much smaller. As you can see, we'll get to that in a second. But this is really a must-have. It comes with all Teslas new. So they should all include this. You'd either want to check your glove box or your console. And if your car does not have one of these new, I would ask for it. And it should be included in the price of the car. I know the used market for Teslas and Model 3s and Model Ys is picked up quite a bit. These can be kind of misplaced. So if you're buying a used Tesla Model 3 or Model Y or Model S or whatever, I would specifically ask the seller whether it's a dealership or private party, if they have this, if it's included, and ask to physically see it. Ask, do you have the J1772 adapter? May I see it, please? And if it's not included, I think these are, 60 or 70 bucks through the Tesla online store to purchase separately. So I would say if they don't have it, I would ask for a slight discount on the car. I'd say, hey, could you knock, I know it seems kind of stupid, but could you knock off 70, 80 bucks off the sales price because I need to buy one of these out of pocket? I would think for most negotiations that wouldn't be a big deal, or they'll miraculously find it and say, oh, I forgot, here it is. But yeah, this is really, really important to have. Definitely would recommend having one of these if you own a Tesla or purchasing one new or used. All right, finally, so this big boy here, this will allow you as a Tesla owner to use third-party DC fast charging stations like EVgo, Electrify America, so on and so forth. Those use what's called the CCS1 standard, which is this humongous plug and interface here, versus you can see how small and elegant the Tesla one is here. So now, little note on this. You do need to have what's called the CCS hardware upgrade done on your vehicle. So when I bought mine, mine did not have that. So I needed to have a retrofit upgrade done on my car. I think altogether it was, I tried to get it done and I told them I already had gotten this adapter through some referral points I had. So I said, oh, I don't need the adapter. They gave me an extra one anyway, which I ended up giving to a friend. All in, I think it was about $350, which included the adapter again, which I didn't need. So I went ahead and gave that one to a friend. You can purchase these separately from the hardware upgrade because I believe, I want to say 2021 and newer Teslas have the CCS hardware capability from the factory. So they don't need the additional onboard upgrade to use this. In my case, I did need it. I went ahead and got it done. I wanted to kind of future-proof my car as much as possible. So anyway, this is a good one to have. I have it in there just in case. Obviously, I try to use superchargers whenever possible. They're much easier, much less cumbersome, and just there's a lot fewer steps involved. Superchargers on Teslas are basically plug and play. You plug it in, your car starts charging. No muss, no fuss. With third party, with like Electrify America, you got to enter in a payment method. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It's kind of been hit and miss. The couple times I've used this third party, it has worked actually pretty well. So besides being kind of heavy and clunky, it works fine. Probably would be something I'd recommend to keep in your car. If you do a lot of road tripping, or you have level 3 charging stations that are closer and more convenient to you than superchargers, which is usually rare because Tesla basically had a 10-year head start on everybody else building charging infrastructure. So more often than not, you'll find a Tesla supercharger before you'll find a level 3 DC fast charger in most parts of the country, not all, but certainly in California. It's hard to go more than about 5 or 10 miles without finding a supercharger somewhere, it seems like. Obviously that's in more developed kind of urban, suburban areas. More rural areas, obviously they're a little more spread apart, but but still probably something good to have. So anyway, that's my adapter roundup. Just to kind of come full circle, like I said, either your wall plug or DC fast charging are not your only charging options. Basically, what I like to tell people is wherever you can find a plug, you can get fuel for your EV. You just kind of, have to have the right adapter, kind of have maybe a little more of kind of an opportunistic mindset in terms of charging options. Obviously, I don't condone or encourage kind of deceptively kind of tapping power, from private businesses or residences without the owner's permission. Always ask. But if you're really in a pickle and you're in a really remote area, and you're on a really low state of charge and you really need to charge, you do have options. So just wanted to try to demystify EV charging a little bit. I hope you found this informative. And finally, kind of wrapping it up, I just wanted to let you know, myself and a friend co-host an EV blog and podcast called The Watt Car. I'll leave a link in the video notes. And if you have any interest, if you're a longtime EV owner, going back more than a decade, or if you just bought one, or if you're just curious about them, please follow, and subscribe the blog and podcast. We've had very interesting guests. If you've been in the EV community a while, you might recognize the name Chelsea Sexton. She's actually been a guest on our podcast. We've had other guests that are involved in the EV and charging infrastructure communities. So we've had some really interesting conversations. Usually it's just myself and Phil kind of going over developments for the week in the world of EVs, which it kind of covers the whole gamut. We do also kind of talk about hybrids and plug-in hybrids too. So basically anything that has to do with transportation electrification, we'll talk about. So anyway, we're just having fun with it. But the main reason I wanted to do this video is to see if there was interest in us expanding into video for the podcast, going beyond just the audio, which is the current format. It's just audio podcast, for us to transition into video. So we're just kind of gauging interest from this. If you found this video informative, like, share, subscribe, share it with friends, make it go viral, as the kids say. Would love to do more video, but it is much more intensive from a production standpoint, in terms of the time we'd need to put into the editing and the production quality. So it's something we're interested in doing, but it is a pretty significant step in terms of time, effort, cost, so forth. So we want to know if it's worth it, and if we get a really positive reaction from this video, we'll look into that and possibly consider starting our own channel for the Watt Car, and bringing you new content about the world of EVs. So let us know if you're interested.